Daniel and Revelation, Lesson 3. During the second year of Babylon's first king, Nebuchadnezzar, God revealed human history to that king from his day to the very end of all human government in a vision of a huge metal image resembling a man. The different parts of that image made of different types of metal. The four different kinds of metal, gold, silver, brass, and iron, represented four different kingdoms that would rule the known world from Daniel's day to the end of the present age. That was Babylon, the head of gold, and Medo-Persia, the chest and arms of silver, and Greece, the midsection of bronze, and Rome, the legs of iron. With the influence of Rome extending to the end of the present age, according to that vision. Well, we covered that material in previous lessons, so I encourage you to go back and watch that one. But much later in Babylon's history, God revealed to Daniel the same historical kingdoms, but not in the form of a man, but rather as vicious beasts. Daniel's different vision came during the reign of the third and final king of Babylon, Belshazzar, the grandson of Nebuchadnezzar. That kingdom ruled the known world about 70 years and was succeeded by the Medes and Persians, as you see on this chart, who took over all of the territory that had been under the Babylonian kings. Daniel survived that takeover and kept his official position under the new king Darius. But long before that, we read in Daniel 7, 1 through 4. In the first year of Belshazzar, the king of Babylon, grandson of Nebuchadnezzar, Daniel had a dream and visions in his head on his bed. He wrote down the dream and told us some of the matters, the primary details. Daniel wrote, I saw in my vision by night, and behold, the four winds of the heaven, four directions of the earth, north, south, east, and west. And they strove upon the great sea of people. In prophetic scriptures, seas represent multitudes of people. You'll see that over and over in the scriptures. And out of them, four great beasts came up from the sea, those multitudes, diverse from one another. The first was like a lion and had eagle's wings. This represented the speed with which Nebuchadnezzar, the king, took over the known world at that time and established the Babylonian kingdom. I watched until its wings were plucked off, and it was lifted up from the earth and made to stand on its feet as a man. And a man's heart was given it, and this refers to Nebuchadnezzar's return to sanity. Now that may sound a little confusing, that little portion of that passage, so I'm going to have to read a good bit more of Daniel to explain that so you can understand why the wings were plucked off and a man's heart was given to him, because the reverse of that happened long before that when Nebuchadnezzar went insane. So we read Daniel 4, 10 through 17. Nebuchadnezzar tells about his dream. The visions I, Nebuchadnezzar, saw while in my bed. I saw a tree. So in this dream, Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, was pictured or symbolized by a tree. I saw a tree in the midst of the earth, and the height of it was great. The tree grew and became strong and reached up to heaven and could be seen to the ends of the earth. And the leaves on it were fair, and much fruit was on it, and in it was food for all. The beasts of the field had shade under it, and the fowls of the heaven roosted in its boughs, and everything that lived was fed by it. I saw in those visions on my bed a watcher, some kind of angelic being, and a holy one, another angelic being, came down from heaven. And he cried aloud, "Cut that tree down, and cut off its branches. Shake off its leaves, and scatter its fruit. Let the beast get away from under it, and fowls away from its branches. But leave the stump of its roots in the earth, even with a band of iron and brass in the tender grass of the field. And let it or him be wet with the dew of heaven, and let his portion be with the beast in the grass of the earth. Let his heart be changed from a man's heart, and let a beast's heart be given unto him. That's the reverse of what we read earlier about the wings being plucked off, and this being stood up as a man, and a man's heart was given to it. The reverse. Nebuchadnezzar went insane and lasted that way for 7 years, and then this tells about it, and then he's restored. And let a beast's heart be given unto him, and let 7 times or years, we'll see, pass over him. Now this matter is by the decree of the watchers, and the demand by the word of the holy ones, to the intent that the living might know that the Most High rules in the kingdom of men, and gives it to whomsoever he will, and sets over it the basest of men, like Nebuchadnezzar, who went insane, but was restored from his insanity. Now, Daniel's interpretation of that dream. Daniel 4, 20 through 26. That tree that you saw, which grew and was strong, whose height reached up to heaven, and the sight of it to the ends of the earth, its leaves fair, its fruit abundant, and in it was food for all, and underneath it the beasts of the field dwelt, and on its branches the fowls of the heaven perched. It is you, O King Nebuchadnezzar, who have grown and become strong, for your greatness has grown and reaches up to heaven, and your dominion to the ends of the earth. And whereas you saw a watcher and a holy one, both angels, coming down from heaven and saying, cut the tree down and destroy it, yet leave the stump of its roots in the ground, even with a band of iron and brass, in the tender grass of the field, and let it be wet with the dew of heaven, and let his portion be with the beasts of the field, until 7 times pass over him 7 years. This is the interpretation. This is the interpretation. Not many, not one of many. The interpretation is what Daniel gave, God gave to him, and Daniel gave to the king. This is the interpretation, O king, and this is the decree of the Most High, which has come upon my lord the king. They, the watcher and holy one, will drive you away from men, and your dwelling will be with the animals of the field. And those 2 heavenly beings will make you eat grass like oxen, and they will wet you with the dew of heaven, and 7 times or years will pass over you, till you know that the Most High rules in the kingdom of men, and he gives it to whomever he will. And whereas they commanded to leave the stump of the tree roots, your kingdom will be sure, or will be restored unto you, after you have learned that heaven rules. Now, Daniel 4, 28 through 34. Now all of this came upon King Nebuchadnezzar within 12 months. When God gives a prophecy over someone, it may not always happen immediately or even in a short period of time. Sometimes it's a little while longer, sometimes it's a long while longer. But when God prophesies it, it will come to pass. And all this happened to King Nebuchadnezzar within 12 months. He'd probably forgotten about Daniel's interpretation by that time and wasn't thinking. So, walking in his palace, he said, is not this great Babylon that I have built for the house of the kingdom by the might of my power and for the honor of my majesty? Pride. While the word was still in the king's mouth, there came a voice from heaven, saying, O King Nebuchadnezzar, to you this is spoken. Your kingdom has departed from you. They will drive you from people, and your dwelling will be with the beasts of the field, and they will make you eat grass like oxen, and 7 times or years will pass over you, until you acknowledge that the Most High rules in the kingdom of men, and gives it to whomever he will. That same hour this thing was fulfilled upon Nebuchadnezzar. He was driven from men, and he ate grass, just as oxen do. And his body was wet with the dew of heaven, until his hair became just like eagle's feathers, and his nails just like birds' claws. At the end of the 7 years, I, Nebuchadnezzar, lifted my eyes to heaven, and my understanding returned to me. And I blessed the Most High, and praised and honored him who lives forever, and whose dominion is an everlasting dominion, and his kingdom from generation to generation. But now back to the beasts. Daniel 7 again, verses 5 through 18. I saw another beast, a second one, like a bear, and it was raised up on one side, and had 3 ribs between its teeth. And they said to it, Arise, devour much flesh. After this I saw another beast, like a leopard, which had on its back 4 wings, just like a bird. And it also had 4 heads, and dominion was given to it. Then I saw in those night visions a 4th beast, dreadful and terrible and exceedingly strong. It had large iron teeth, and devoured and broke in pieces and stamped the residue with its feet. And it was diverse from all the beasts that were before it, and it had 10 horns. Notice only the 4th beast had 10 horns, not any of the others. And we will go over each of these beasts, these kingdoms, in more detail in later lessons, but now we're moving on. But then there came up among those 10 horns another little horn, not shown on this picture, but we'll deal with that later, before whom 3 of those first horns were plucked up by the roots, and in that horn were eyes like the eyes of a man, and a mouth speaking great things. I watched till the thrones were set, and the Ancient of Days did sit, whose garment was white as snow, and the hair of his head like pure wool. And his throne was like a fiery flame, and his wheels like a burning fire. A fiery stream issued and came forth from before him. Thousands of thousands ministered unto him, and 10,000 times 10,000 stood before him. The judgment was set, and the books were opened. And I watched with special interest because of the voice of the great words the little horn spoke. And I watched till the beast was slain, and his body destroyed, and given to the burning flame, hell. Concerning the rest of the beasts, those kingdoms, they had their dominion taken away, yet their lives were prolonged for a season and time, speaking of the millennium. At the end of this age, after the battle of Armageddon, the survivors of that great war will go into the millennium reign of Christ, and thus resurrected saints for 1,000 years, where those people will be ruled with a rod of iron. We'll explain all of that in more detail later. And I saw in the night visions one like the Son of Man come with the clouds of heaven. And he came to the Ancient of Days, and they brought him near to him. And he, Christ, was given dominion and glory and a kingdom, so that all people, nations, and languages should serve him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion, which will not pass away, and his kingdom will not be destroyed. I, Daniel, was grieved in my spirit, in the midst of my body, and the visions of my head troubled me. I came near one of them who stood by, and asked him the truth about all of this. So he told me and made me know the interpretation, once again, the interpretation of the things I beheld in my vision. These great beasts, 4 of them, are 4 kings or kingdoms, which will arise out of the earth's population. But the saints of the Most High God will take over the kingdom and will possess the kingdom forever. We'll see in these lessons that both Daniel and Revelation are more about Christ than about the Antichrist. The purpose of both prophetic books is to reveal that God is in ultimate control of creation and will restore what he created to its original purpose, just as he has promised through prophet after prophet throughout history. So where is God today? Just where he tells us he is in his written word, the Bible.